Good afternoon. My name is Clay Mitchell. I'm assistant principal at MAH00001 Elementary, which is the 5th and 6th grade school for Oxford City School System. And I'm going to talk today with Miss Rosa Mans, who is our math intervention specialist. She is responsible for placing our students in math intervention. She's the one that's responsible for being over the data. There's a team that looks at it, but she's over that team of looking at data and deciding what our students' is the areas of need. So we're going to talk a little bit about math intervention and how we do what we do with math intervention at MAH000. So first of all, thank you, Ms. Mans, for taking time to talk with us. Just going to ask you some questions and then ask your opinion on some things of what you do every day, day in and day out, since you're over our math intervention. Question number one, and again, I'm going to kind of word this in a way that makes sense to me. The first question talks about how the curriculum is integrated horizontally and vertically and that it engages students in rigorous, relevant academic challenges. So to me, the way I want us to talk about that is, Ms. Mann, talk for just a minute about when you start looking at students at the beginning of the year or before the beginning of the year even starts, and you start looking at certain benchmark tests that we give to decide what a student's areas of need is. Talk for just in general, you don't have to talk specific, talk in general about how do you come to conclusions of grouping students based on that data? In other words, how do you decide these 15 students need to be in this intervention, these 15 need to be in this intervention? Just talk in general.
Okay. So we actually start looking at the data at the end of the school year. And we look at state testing, district testing, and also local testing within the school building. And so when we come to the conclusion from looking at the data that a particular child needs intervention because of the scores that we're seeing, then we follow through on that at the beginning of the year. And so our state testing, of course, tells us, what's happening, where this child should be within the state.
Right.
The district data usually comes from scientific-based programs that the district has purchased that helps us to understand better what areas of weakness this child is experiencing and how to better, serve that child. And it's those scientific-based programs that help us really to determine what's going to help that child. So as we look at them again at the beginning of the year, as we have at the end of the year, then we look at all the intervention programs that are available. Would a scientific-based program serve this child better? Would one-on-one tutoring serve this child better? And so from the data and from looking at what the programs offer, then we make the decision of which one is best.
So you match the student's need to what program best addresses what their problem is.
Correct.
Oh, great. Okay. All right. Question number two, or discussion number two, it asks a question that talks about how do you assure that instructional objectives and curricular goals are aligned. So when you're talking with a teacher that's going to teach a particular intervention program, what information do you feel like, or what information other than data, does that teacher need anything else about that student, or do they just know that if Ms. Mans has placed them in this intervention program, let's say the intervention program addresses students that are having difficulty with fractions, is there any other information they need from you, or do they pretty much understand that if I'm placing this student in your intervention program, then their area of need is exactly the same as everyone else in there?
Okay. I would actually ask the teacher to pull that child's record and just kind of look at across the board how they've been doing. How did they do in fractions last year? How did they do in the fractions the year before? And when they were first introduced, was there any growth across the line? And if the teacher saw that there was no growth from year to year in fractions, then it would indicate to me to say to that teacher, they need to go back to some hands-on things because they don't understand the concept, And so I think looking back at how they did before is going to be the key thing, not just that particular year.
Okay, so not only how they're performing currently, you may recognize from historical data that we need to back up and we need to fix some other problems, not just what we're seeing currently. There's obviously some problems that have happened before now that you need to look. Okay, that makes sense. All right. Next here discussion is how you lead and motivate faculty members to adhere to prescribed state standards. And I know from talking with you and working with you that intervention programs, you do look at standards, but it's not so much standards like a core program as it is what does the data tell me that's the problem with a student. Do you have any kind of way that you pair teachers up with a particular program? In other words, do you pair a teacher up with what you think their strength is on what intervention program they're taught? Or is it simply a matter of a teacher is assigned to a certain intervention program and you put the students in that program?
We do always try to look at the personalities there of the teacher, and when I say personality, their professional personality, as far as, is this teacher really good in this area?
Mm-hmm.
And with this teacher in the area that they specialize in, would it fit with the child?
Okay.
And so once we try to determine that, it's not always possible to do that, but if we can determine that, then we feel like that's an add-on, that's a great thing. And so I think motivation for the teacher, because sometimes if you're not an intervention teacher, or you are a core teacher and you've got intervention added on, I think sometimes you kind of give more credence to your core than you do to your intervention. And so we just try to make that teacher understand how important it is to teach to fidelity the intervention.
Right.
Because
so you do have discussion with them of basically, you know, we need to adhere to this program and follow it the way that it's been written.
Yes.
And if there's a problem with that, then let's you and I have a discussion and see what we need to clean that up.
Yes.
Does that sound right? Okay. All right. This next question talks about how do you work with staff and other members to establish and accomplish goals. So what I would like to hear you talk for just a minute about is, based on the student, do you and the teacher have conversation, or are you looking, I know because I know you constantly look at new data on students, do you make the determination that a certain student seems to be ready to move out of that intervention program? In other words, the area of need that they had that placed them in that intervention program seems to be cleaned up. Is that something that you mainly make the decision on? Does the teacher come to you and say, hey, I think Johnny's problem that placed him in here is cleaned up. He doesn't seem to be having that same problem. How do you decide if a student's ready to move out of an intervention program?
Okay, it actually works both ways. Sometimes the teacher comes to me with some information that says, well, you know, I think this person is ready to move on because they have mastered this skill. And then sometimes, because I keep up with the data and I know what's going on, because the teachers make sure I get the data, or either it's on the computer. So sometimes I recognize and I look at something and I think, wow, you know, this child is excelling. They really need to be, you know, they need to be moved on so that they can, you know, master more skills. And so it's kind of, it happens both ways.
So there's a little bit of give and take. Some you may recognize it first, the teacher may recognize it first and come to you. And I'm guessing when the teacher comes to you, obviously you and her or you and him, you're going to sit down and have a conversation. You're going to want to know from them, okay, what is it that's leading you to believe that this student is ready to move out of the intervention program? Does that sound right?
It does.
Okay.